Subgenres of horror films explained. You got demonic, paranormal, monster, slasher, zombie, gore, witchcraft, vampire, psychological, and comedic. Okay. So you got the subgenres of horror. And I guess this article explains them all. This might be an interesting read.
Yeah, we could go into some of them. We can take some bulk time to go to each individual one, but I would like to kind of pick out some movies that we can think of that have these subgenres too, like psychological. Right off the bat, what do you think of with psychological?
Everything M. Night Shyamalan.
Sure, I'm instantly going to The Shining. The Shining is like the ultimate classic psychological for me.
Yeah. And I think on some level, I think we tend to put thrillers into the category of psychological horror, but it still kind of is horror. So like Silence of the Lambs, I kind of put that in psychological horror, you know? Silence of the Lambs is psychological horror.
Did they have slasher? It's kind of a slasher slash, I say slasher slash serial killer because that feels like a category in itself on top of slasher. It is
serial killer is not one of them. Serial killer is not a subgenre.
It would be under slasher.
Okay.
It would be under slasher. But I'm kind of calling that its own subcategory of a category because it is a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
And so psychological serial killer. So it kind of is too. Oh, that's fun. They're throwing multiple categories in there.
Yeah. All right. So let's go through some of these. Demon possession. Sometimes thought of as supernatural horror, this subgenre plays into the unknown of the human experience. Demons have been part of historical storytelling for centuries. They represent evil in many forms, including mythical, religious, and supernatural. One of the most known demonic movies examples of all time is William Friedkin's 1973 movie, The Exorcist, of course.
Have you seen the original Exorcist?
I actually haven't. I actually have not.
That is actually the only Exorcist movie I've seen because I've watched a few like The Conjuring and The Babadook. And
I've watched all of the Conjuring universe movies.
I've seen a few of them and I was like, they're all the same. I don't like demon possession. But then I dabbled with the first Exorcist only because I was like, it's a classic. It's got a great soundtrack and I want to see the original concept to it because it had that nothing.
So much controversy behind it.
Controversy, but also like it was an original idea. It wasn't like, all the demon possession movies kind of are mocking or like going off of what they already have, what we've seen on cinema. Maybe there's something a little bit new, but it's kind of they're recreating what we've already seen a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that movie was the original movie that kind of started all of that.
Started kind of the demon possession horrors, right?
Yes.
And a lot of the horror in general tropes that we see in most horror films today.
Yeah.
Paranormal. All right. So this is kind of where you have to distinguish between the two. Paranormal horror is closely related to the demonic subgenre in that it focuses on characters who aren't living beings. Spirits and ghosts spook viewers and create fear without a physical presence on screen. For example, furniture moves without any touching, or a chill passes through the air out of nowhere. So some of these is The Conjuring, Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, ghosts versus demons.
Yeah, but The Conjuring is the same thing as The Exorcist. It's a demon. Yeah, so I don't agree with The Conjuring. Maybe things like The Babadook. No, is The Babadook? No, is that a paranormal?
I would consider that demon possession.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Paranormal would be
ghosts.
Yeah, anything ghost related.
Ghost versus demon.
Which the demons usually become physical. So like, okay, did you watch the movie Smile?
Ner.
Okay, it's pretty intense.
Mhm.
That is got to be demon possession because it's all physical, and it's got to be it's literally it possesses in order to fulfill its deeds, right?
Mhm.
Paranormal means it doesn't always have to be physical to fulfill its deeds. So they're saying
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if they're presenting it as like it can move things around or whatever, then it's kind of more paranormal without it being a possession demon, right? So I
Yes.
don't know, but they mix them. Like The Conjuring is a mixture of demon possession and paranormal, right?
Yes.
Like it's got to be. Um, okay, let's go on to Monster. I believe this is Wyatt's favorite for sure.
Oh, yeah. But I think Wyatt. Go ahead and read it, and then I'll get into it.
Vampires, aliens, and giant sea creatures are all antagonistic antagonists in the monster movie genre. Unlike their supernatural counterparts, monsters can wreak havoc on a community of people in one fell swoop. Monsters terrorize and kill whatever is in their path and use their strength and size to destroy. Universal Studios popularized the monster genre in Hollywood from the 1930s and 50s with Frankenstein's Dracula,
Yeah.
Frankenstein, Dracula, the creature of the Black Lagoon, and many other iconic monsters. Jaws is also a monster movie.
Yeah. I think there can be. So this goes back to kind of subcategories. Because, yes, vampires, Godzilla, werewolf movies, they're all monster. Then I think there is maybe a Krampus. Krampus is a monster.
Krampus?
Krampus. How do you pronounce it?
Krampus?
Krampus. Krampies? The Cramp Man.
It's
When
the
I get
Christmas, the
Yes,
Christmas monster.
that has some aspects of like, I don't know if you call it paranormal. Not really, but maybe paranormal slash monster.
Okay.
Where it's
There's no possession in that one,
there's
right?
no possession, but it's almost like um it has a mystery legend to it, kind of, over just
That's
the
like the
monster.
Babadook, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing as the Babadook. It's almost like a physical demon creature, right? It's like a physical demon
Yeah.
monster in some capacity, right?
Yeah. I would agree with Wyatt. Monsters, and probably the next category, slasher, is probably my favorite. I like slasher, but I enjoy a good werewolf movie. Me and Wyatt, for a while on the podcast, were going and watching a lot of werewolf movies to kind of, get our fix on the full moon
Mm-hmm.
uh, experience.
Slasher movies focus on villains who are human. Slasher villains are usually serial killers and typically have a high body count by the end of the movie. So they stalk their victims and brutally murder the film's protagonists and anyone who gets in their way.
Hmm.
Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers,
Yeah.
Jason. See, I told you, Jason Voorhees, better known as Jason, are iconic slasher villains in horror film
Yeah. Or
history.
like Stepfather. I think that's what it's called. Um, Everybody knows what I'm talking about. That's a classic. Yeah, there's it's serial killer.
Are there any new slasher films
Uh,
that are like this Halloween season? You know what I mean?
I can't think of any, but they're always redoing the same ones, like Jason. Um, no, Michael Myers. They're always doing Michael Myers, a new
Mm-hmm.
Halloween movie. Like there's been like 4 Halloween ends, or the final Halloween, or
Mm-hmm.
there's been so many of those. I swear. What's her name? She's in Freaky
Jamie
Friday. Jamie Lee
Jamie Lee
Curtis.
Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis makes all her money from Freaky Friday and Halloween movies.
Halloween for sure. She's been in like almost all the Halloween
Yeah, and
movies.
then she like guest stars in like a NCIS once in a while.
There is a new horror film that I was interested in the trailer for it. I think it's called Cuckoo.
Cuckoo. I don't know
Like,
that.
okay,
There is a
Cuckoo.
there is a really there is a really good werewolf movie that I saw a trailer for when I went and saw Joker 2.
Okay. And then I've heard that Long Legs is pretty popular
Mhm.
right now. Um, so
There's a
there's
lot
a couple.
there yes, and there's also a lot of I would say the slasher can have I wouldn't consider this as horror in the horror genre, but there's a lot of murder mystery slasher movie/shows that's out there. Like I would even consider like Red John from The Mentalist as a serial killer.
Slasher, serial
Yeah,
killer, yeah.
because like something like that. I'm just
Well, hold
using
on,
an
hold on.
example.
There's a difference. So there's a difference between a serial killer cop show and a serial killer slasher film. Like
Yes.
it's two separate
There's murder
things.
mystery
Murder
slasher
mystery.
and then slasher
No,
movie.
no, no, no. There is slasher films and there are cop murder mysteries. Serial killers can be in both of them.
Yeah.
But the difference is how the story is told and what tropes and what styles it uses to tell that story, right?
Yeah, I
So,
guess.
like, you can make a
Yeah, yeah.
cop
Is it
investigation slasher
so
film.
one's focusing on the cops and one is focused on the victim being stalked by the serial killer. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not even about that. It's about the vibe. It's
So
about the vibe of
what
that's
would you
being
call
approached.
Seven, the show Seven? Because it's about Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, two cops, two detectives looking for a serial killer who is all of his victims kind of follow the seven deadly
I
sins.
I put it in psychological horror. Yeah, psychological horror is what Seven is.
Okay, okay. Yeah, you're right. That wouldn't be a slasher. Technically it would, but maybe not. No.
It's not. It's a
It's not. Yeah,
psychological
yeah,
horror film,
psychological.
but it is not a slasher horror film, even though it is dealing with a serial killer. Again, you can figure it out by thinking about all the tropes and the vibe of the movies that slasher films do exist. Like
Yeah.
look at the Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason. That kind of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Those are slasher films. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um
Um,
the next one, zombies. I would consider that a monster.
so let's see what they have to say. All right. Zombie movies cross multiple horror genres. One part monster movie, one part possession. Zombie thrillers make a perfect cocktail of terror.
Mm.
Somehow, they are the most difficult villain to kill off and just keep um, coming back for more. These
So it's
corpse-like characters are cannibalistic by nature and can affect the victims. Yeah, 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 yeah.
so
Walking
it's
Dead. Okay.
it yeah, I would zombie movie would be the White Russian of cocktails.
Maybe. I think there's also an aspect of um so for example, I think zombie hits a I'm going to go out on a limb, okay?
Okay. Just don't break
Zombie
yourself. Don't break the limb.
zom okay, then I might not go that far out on the limb.
Just
Zombie
tiptoe a
genres
little bit.
can go further past actual zombies on screen. So obviously I Am Legend is a zombie, right?
Yeah.
They are not technically zombies, but they are zombies. So it's a
They're
zombie
infected.
style subgenre.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that mass brainlessness murdering it would be considered a zombie subgenre. So this is where the branch might break. A
Okay.
Quiet Place. Okay.
Yeah. That's monster.
It is monster first, but
Okay.
it has a zombie vibe to it. All right. So it is a
Where are you getting
large
that?
scale. So
Because
what I'm saying,
it
it
zombie the monsters
looks like the
in
freaking
Quiet Place,
branch broke.
A Quiet Place, those monsters can't infect you because the zombies are infection
Well, I
monsters.
think it's yes, there is a level of infection worry there, but more so you're just worried about being eaten when it comes to zombies. Um, I think
Okay.
that the nature of a large mass threat. So
Mhm.
there is something that is taking over the world and you are on a survival mission against it, right? To stay
Yes.
away from it, to protect yourself from it. I think that comes from the zombie genre. All
Okay.
right. You hit things like A Quiet Place, where it is on the face a monster movie, a
Okay.
monster horror,
Yep.
but with the fact that it is a mass monster uh, horror type of film, it kind of falls into the horde zombie genre as well, the horde threat. You know what I mean? So I think there's some. It's a monster film, but I think there's some zombie elements there as well. I mean, that's how I define it, and that's how I see it. Would you agree on some capacity with that? It's like
I caught about half of that.
there's not an individual threat. It is you could
Yes.
kill one. The threat is the fact that there's so many you can't kill them all, right?
Oh,
It's
okay.
just a matter of escaping. All
So
right?
it's, but I wouldn't call that a zombie.
I think it's
Whatever the
it's a
cat.
zombie
It's
trope.
a. I would
It's a
say
zombie
it's a
trope.
monster. I would almost call it its own thing. It's the monster subcategory, but it's the um
With a zombie approach, man.
over a population of monster. No, that wouldn't be the right way of saying it.
You're
We're
trying to
both
you're
saying
trying
the
to
same. We're both
yeah,
kind of
no.
saying something.
It is a monster film with a zombie like base. That's what I think. I
Sure.
think it is a zombie base turned into a monster. So instead of a mass of humanoid dead people trying to kill you, they made a mass of monsters trying to kill you. All right? That's what it
Sure.
is. So I think it's presented as a monster film, but it is kind of zombie in nature.
Okay.
Um, let's go to
Witchcraft.
gore. All right?
I
Gore.
we skipped one. Yeah.
Also known as the splatter genre, gore is all about the portrayal of graphic violence. Blood, guts, and body trauma are classic elements in gore movies. Films in the gore category rely heavily on special effects to disfigure body parts. Ugh. New
What's
filmmakers
the
can experiment with effects and get creative with theatrical makeup.
I'm trying to think of the most graphic bloody movie I've watched recently. What's the one Wyatt really likes to watch with um Monster? No, I got to look this up. Keep reading, and I'm going to look this up.
I was just gonna say, so examples are The Evil Dead and Cabin Fever. This is kind of it's sort of slasher, but slashers tend to be a little bit mild on the gore of things.
Mhm.
Um,
The Thing.
the Thing,
The
okay.
Thing has so much gore in it. I don't think it's in the category of gore, but because it's monster, but it has so much gore in it that
Mhm.
I would put it in that category also, kind of.
Honestly, gore, I actually kind of stay away from. I'm not a big
Yeah,
fan of the gore, and I actually have a whole thought about this. You want me to
gore
get
can.
into it?
Let me say this, and then you can't. Gore can be kind of cheesy sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I also am. I'm So this is kind of getting into like my personal opinions, all right,
Okay.
and personal belief system. So I am pretty sensitive as to the nature in which a Hollywood film approaches a movie. All right, so there I have certain standards on things that I'm like I don't want to see that. I'd prefer it not to be there, or I just avoid it
Yeah.
completely. Right. So when it comes to gore, the unnecessary violence. All right. So okay, here's an example that I did watch that I wish I hadn't. Okay, so Cocaine Bear. Did you watch that?
I dabbled with it. I think it was on here and there. I don't remember it being that gory because I just kind of had it on in the background. I don't remember
Dude,
watching all of it before.
Cocaine Bear was so incredibly graphic. It was definitely a comedy gore kind of thing.
Okay. So that
And
puts it in the comedy
yeah,
kind of
it puts it in
category
the
and
comedy
gore.
category, but it was gore 100%. I'm not a big fan of that because when it comes to horror films, this in this specific category is I'm not a fan of making light of the destruction of the human body. If you are telling an engaging story where we are the characters either attempting to or the story is going to allow for the person who basically justice to be found in the story,
Mm,
you know what I mean? Then
yeah.
I'm more accepting of violence. But I do not like the glorification of the destruction of the human body. If it motivates something, okay. If it's just there because we're just trying to make the most graphic gore possible,
Yeah.
I don't care for that. And that's something that I you kind of know it when you see it.
Yeah.
Like Cocaine Bear, I saw it and I was like, "Oh, this is what I don't like." You know what I mean? This is what I think is I have an issue with. So that's the gore genre is for me personally something I tend to stay away from, and if I see it, I will most likely turn it off. That's how I feel about it. Um,
Makes sense. Um, Witchcraft, Disney, just basically Disney.
okay, so witchcraft have a long history of mischief in folklore. Mischief is a pretty light way to put it. They use the power of magic to cast spells on their victims, turning them into all kinds of tortured beings. Similar to the paranormal genre, witchcraft uses supernatural elements to create fear. Movies like The Witch and Suspiria are great examples of terror caused by witches. I think Yellow Jackets has an element of that, but it's not
Okay.
really witches. All right,
The show
it's
Yellow Jackets.
witchcraft. Yeah, the show Yellow
Okay.
Jackets. It's more about like witchcraft than it is witches. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, Yeah, and there's like the whole it's like they combine like a mythical monster that the monster represents with kind of witchcraft and different stuff. I haven't seen as many of these like horror witch films. Have you seen very many of these?
Not films specifically, but I think there is an aspect where like vampires and werewolves and witches, they like to mix together in a lot of things where it first starts off with one of them like werewolves or vampires and then it kind of you as the longer you're watching it you realize there's like witches and
Hmm.
the other monsters in it and it kind of all blends together. Even like for example like Vampire Diaries, that show, it's vampires but there's werewolves and there's all other kind of things in it.
I just googled it. So like Hereditary is pretty creepy. I didn't watch that one, but that one got a lot of praise for how scary it is. I'd be interested in watching Hereditary. That was like a witch horror. Um, the Blair Witch Project. All right. So I don't know. That seems kind of demon possession, but I don't know. I don't know.
We just have psychological and one more, correct?
Vampire. English literature popularized vampire stories, which were basically just ghost stories of the dead returning to haunt the living. It wasn't until the slow burn success of Dracula that helped launch vampire stories into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
There's been countless low budget Dracula movies throughout the years, including Horror of Dracula, The Bride of Dracula, Dracula's Dog. One of the more successful vampire movies besides the Twilight series is Neil Jordan's adaptation of 1976 novel Interview
With the
with a
vampire.
Vampire. A young Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt played vampires. So, vampire. And did you watch that one show on Netflix? Black was it the Black? Was it Black Mass?
The one season show.
Yeah, yeah.
I peeked at it here and there as Wyatt was watching it. I watched full episodes, but I didn't catch the whole season. I do know what you're talking about.
Midnight Mass. Midnight
Yes,
Mass.
I
That
watched it
was
with Wyatt.
that was so good. Like, you want to talk about vampire horror series?
Mhm.
Midnight Mass on Netflix is really good. Like, you should check out Midnight Mass, especially if you're a fan of like vampire stuff. Like, Midnight Mass was really good. You should watch it.
Yes.
Hard recommendation. You don't even realize it's a zombie movie until you
Well, if we're
get
recommending,
deep into it.
I'm recommending Warm Bodies. I know it's not vampires. It's
Good.
so I'm
Warm
kidding.
bodies.
I'm
Warm
kidding.
bodies. All right, we actually have two more. We have psychological
Yep.
and comedic. Psychological horror is not about what we see on screen, but how it makes us feel. The
Mhm.
genre plays tricks on the viewer's mind to create
Yes.
paranoia.
Like we kind of already talked about it a little bit. The Shining.
Yeah.
Hannibal
Everything M.
Lecter.
Night Shyamalan. Yeah.
Yes, but I would only call that. Wouldn't call that horror genre. I would call that more suspenseful because, like,
They're putting it in the horror genre, saying it's suspenseful. That's a way to describe it. But the category is psychological horror.
sure, I'll give him a pass here.
A pass. I think
Yeah.
it's what it is. Psychological horror is suspense, right? So I think almost everything M. Night Shyamalan has done is psychological horror. We kind of already talked about it some
Yeah,
with the
we did.
Conjuring stuff, so we can move on. Comedic. So comedic horror is possibly the most fun of all horror movies
Warm
out
Bodies.
there. It's a subgenre that is equally fun as it is scary. It takes the viewers
Scary Movie.
It takes the viewer to complete opposite ends of the horror spectrum, resulting in a roller coaster of emotions. Classic examples of the comedy horror films include Scream, Shaun of the Dead,
No, that's right.
Shuan,
Yeah, that's right.
and The Cabin in the Woods. So I've actually
Yes.
wanted. That's another thing I haven't watched. I wanted to watch Scream.
So I've
Have
watched
you watched any of the Screams?
one of the Screams, but I have seen Cabin in the Woods. It's Cabin in the Woods is like they take all of it and put all the tropes together to make one horror thing, and so that's what Cabin in the Woods is. But yeah, I would agree.
The Scream that you watched, were you laughing at when you watched Scream?
No, it was kind of scary to me. But I also get scared at these things. So
Okay. I think Cocaine Bear again falls into that, but
Yeah.
it's also gore and comedy. And I think the only reason it fell into gore horror and not just a straight up comedy is because they included gore in it. It's meant to be a comedy movie, but they
Yes.
included really graphic gore, so now it's in the horror genre,
Yeah. Kit, let us know what's your favorite subcategory of horror and what movies are you going to be watching this spooky season?
I'm gonna watch the Screams. I'm gonna watch
oh.
all of the Screams is what I'm gonna do.
He's coming to all of them. There's a lot of them, but
There's like 8, I think.
that's a lot. Well, Joseph's going to watch Scream. Let us know in the comments what you guys are going to be watching this spooky season. You got anything planned out? I know last Halloween I watched The Shining for the first time. It was enjoyable.